Imagine standing on the windswept shores of southeastern Iran, where the waves of the Arabian Sea crash into a port that has quietly become one of the most talked about projects in global geopolitics. This is Chabahar, a city that until recently few outside the region had heard of. But today it sits at the crossroads of ambition, rivalry, and strategy. For India, the Chabahar port is not just concrete and steel, it's not just cranes and cargo, it is a lifeline to Central Asia, a counterweight to China's influence, and perhaps one of the boldest moves in its foreign policy playbook. And yet, as we move into 2025, the question must be asked, is this port truly India's gateway to Central Asia? Or has New Delhi stepped into a geopolitical gamble that could reshape its destiny for decades to come? This is not a story of trade alone. It is a story of power, risk, and global ambition. Heck, the Chabahar project has always carried with it a sense of urgency and drama. Located on the southeastern coast of Iran, Chabahar is less than 200 kilometers from Gwadar, Pakistan, the crown jewel of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Gwadar has been developed with Chinese money and Chinese management, transforming it into a strategic hub that anchors Beijing's presence in the Arabian Sea. For India, watching Gwadar rise was not just uncomfortable, it was a direct challenge. India, a nation boxed in by Pakistan to the west and China to the north, needed its own outlets, its own foothold. And Chabahar offered that opening. With Iran as a partner, India could bypass Pakistan entirely and establish a direct link into Afghanistan and the broader Central Asian region, a market of energy-rich states that remain critical to global supply chains. But as is the case in geopolitics, nothing is ever simple. India first entered into an agreement to develop Chabahar in the early 2000s, but progress was slow, delayed by sanctions on Iran, diplomatic hurdles, and India's own cautious approach. It wasn't until the mid-2010s that the project gained serious momentum, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi pushing hard to turn Chabahar into a reality. Agreements were signed, investments were promised, and the first phases of development took shape. By 2025, Chabahar is operational and steadily expanding, with India playing a leading role. Yet, even as cranes move cargo and ships dock at its harbors, the port is still less about containers and more about strategy. Every move India makes in Chabahar reverberates in Washington, Beijing, Moscow, Islamabad, and across the Gulf. Why is Chabahar so important? Let's start with geography. For decades, India's access to Afghanistan and Central Asia has been blocked by Pakistan, a neighbor that refuses to grant transit rights. That has meant India's trade ambitions with countries like Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and beyond have been stunted. Chabahar changes that equation. From the port, goods can move by road and rail into Afghanistan, then further north into Central Asia, unlocking markets, resources, and partnerships. For energy-hungry India, this corridor is critical. Central Asia holds vast reserves of oil, gas, and minerals resources that India needs for its growing economy. For Central Asia, India represents a massive market that can help them diversify away from reliance on Russia and China. The potential is enormous. But with potential comes risk. Consider the players involved. Iran, under heavy Western sanctions for years, sees Chabahar as a gateway to break its isolation. By partnering with India, Tehran gains an economic partner that provides investment and legitimacy, even as it remains at odds with Washington. For India, working with Iran is a balancing act. On one hand, Iran is an indispensable partner for Chabahar and energy cooperation. On the other, India's deepening ties with the United States put it under pressure to limit engagement with Tehran. This tightrope walk has defined much of India's Chabahar policy. Time and again, India has slowed or paused investments whenever U.S. sanctions intensified. And yet, New Delhi never abandoned the project entirely, knowing its long-term strategic value outweighed the short-term costs. But here lies the gamble. By pushing forward with Chabahar in 2025, India risks angering Washington at a time when India's ties are stronger than ever. The two nations are building defense, trade, and technology partnerships, all aimed at countering China's rise. Washington has been relatively tolerant of Chabahar, even carving out waivers in the past, recognizing its importance for Afghanistan's development. But today, with US-Iran tensions still simmering, the tolerance is not unlimited. Any misstep could place India in an uncomfortable position, forced to choose between its strategic partnership with America and its economic engagement with Iran. Then there's China. The Chabahar-Gwadar dynamic is one of the most fascinating rivalries in the region. With Gwadar, China is not only building infrastructure but also projecting military and naval power into the Indian Ocean. Chabahar, by contrast, is India's counterbalance, a way to ensure it is not boxed out of the region. But can Chabahar realistically rival Gwadar? China has poured billions into Gwadar, with the entire Belt and Road Initiative feeding into its success. India's investments in Chabahar, while significant, are far smaller. Moreover, Iran itself has welcomed Chinese investment in other parts of the country, meaning India cannot take its exclusive position for granted. Already, analysts warn that if India doesn't move quickly and decisively, China could find a way to insert itself into Chabahar as well, diluting India's influence. Let's not forget Russia. Moscow, long the dominant player in Central Asia, views Chabahar with mixed feelings. On one hand, Russia wants to see alternatives to Western-backed trade routes, and Chabahar fits that bill. On the other hand, Moscow is wary of India growing too strong in Central Asia, a region it still sees as its backyard. At the same time, Russia's partnership with China complicates India's calculus. If Chabahar is seen as a threat to Beijing's Gwadar ambitions, Moscow may tilt subtly against it, aligning with its Chinese partner. This means India must carefully manage Russian perceptions, ensuring Chabahar is seen as complementary, not competitive, to Moscow's interests. Now consider Pakistan. For decades, Islamabad has blocked India's westward ambitions. With Gwadar, Pakistan is not only gaining economic leverage, but also positioning itself as China's key partner in the region. Chabahar bypasses Pakistan entirely, undercutting its ability to strangle India's access. For Pakistan, the rise of Chabahar is a nightmare scenario, threatening to marginalize its role as a trade corridor. This is why you can expect Islamabad to do everything in its power to undermine the project, whether by lobbying Washington against it, working with Beijing to strengthen Gwadar, or stirring instability in the region to make Chabahar less secure. Security, in fact, is one of Chabahar's greatest vulnerabilities. The region is volatile, with insurgent groups, cross-border tensions, and the ever-present risk of conflict. Afghanistan, the key link in the Chabahar corridor, remains unstable even after the U.S. withdrawal. Without reliable security, trade routes through Afghanistan may be too risky to fully exploit. That leaves India with a dilemma: how to ensure its investments are protected without getting drawn into conflicts or quagmires it cannot control. And then there is the domestic dimension. For India, Chabahar is more than foreign policy, as a test of its ambition to be a global economic power. The port symbolizes India's desire to shape the rules of global trade, to be a player in Eurasia, and to break free from the constraints of geography imposed by its rival Pakistan. But it also raises questions at home. Will the benefits of Chabahar expanded trade, energy access, and geopolitical clout be worth the billions spent abroad? Can India's limited resources sustain such ambitious overseas projects, while also meeting domestic needs? These are questions policymakers in Delhi cannot ignore. So, as we stand in 2025, with Chabahar moving forward, the stakes could not be higher. If successful, Chabahar could cement India's position as a global connector, a bridge between Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. It could provide India with direct access to resources, new markets for its goods, and a stronger foothold in Central Asia, countering both China and Pakistan. But if it falters, if instability in Afghanistan derails the corridor, if U.S. sanctions tighten, if China manages to co-opt the project, then Chabahar could become a costly gamble, a symbol of ambition that never quite materialized. This is why the Chabahar deal is being watched so closely around the world. To some, it is India's great leap forward, a bold declaration that it will not be hemmed in by its geography. To others, it is a risky bet that could entangle India in conflicts and rivalries it cannot control. And that tension between opportunity and risk, between ambition and caution is what makes Chabahar one of the most fascinating geopolitical stories of our time. For the global audience, the story of Chabahar is also a lesson in how modern geopolitics works. It shows that ports are no longer just about ships and cargo. They are about influence, access, and power. It shows that trade routes are not just about goods. They are about who sets the rules of the global economy. And it shows that small cities, once obscure, can suddenly become arenas where the world's greatest powers collide. As India doubles down on Chabahar in 2025, the world is watching. Will this port deliver on its promise and make India a central hub in Eurasia's trade networks? Or will it become a quagmire, draining resources and exposing India to risks it cannot control? That answer is not yet clear. But what is clear is this: the stakes are immense, the players are powerful, and the outcome will shape not only India's future, but also the balance of power across Asia. For now, Chabahar stands as both a beacon of opportunity and a warning sign of risk. It is India's gamble on geography, on geopolitics, and on its own ability to navigate the stormy waters of global power. Whether it becomes a gateway to Central Asia or a geopolitical gamble gone wrong, that is the question that history will answer. And as the waves crash against its docks, as cranes lift containers, as deals are signed in Delhi and Tehran, one thing is certain: the story of Chabahar is far from over, and its next chapter will be one of the most consequential in India's modern history.